Hi, hello, welcome to another video, and here I want to share this article about um, incidence of tardive dyskinesia with atypical and conventional antipsychotic medications. So it compares if the two groups taking atypical and typical antipsychotics and comparing them. So as far as I know, second generation antipsychotics, atypical antipsychotics seems to be advertised as safer in terms of tardive dyskinesia risk. However, it's still unclear, and there are different situations in which you can observe that sometimes even second generation patients who are on second generation antipsychotics can develop tardive dyskinesia. So here we see most previous studies of the incidence of tardive dyskinesia with atypical compared to conventional antipsychotics haven't had tardive dyskinesia as their primary focus. So they compare it, and the study seems to be published in 2011, 10 years ago. And that baseline subjects were receiving conventional antipsychotics and atypical only, and both. So in 2011, I think that's the trend in that country, trend of prescribing antipsychotics. But I think the sample size is not that small compared with subjects treated with typical antipsychotics alone. Since the previous visit, the adjusted tardive dyskinesia incidence ratio for subjects treated with atypical antipsychotics alone was 0.68. So the incidence and the prevalence of tardive dyskinesia was similar to previous findings at the site in the 1980s. So it says there's no much change, I guess, but I think the better calculation is necessary to conclude that. The incidence of tardive dyskinesia with recent exposure to atypical antipsychotics alone was more similar that for conventional antipsychotics than in most previous studies. Despite high penetration of atypical antipsychotics into clinical practice, the incidence and prevalence of tardive dyskinesia appeared relatively unchanged, but it is actually ignored since that time. I think most of the recent research articles are mentioning the genetics of it, and some of them really assume that there's no such thing like tardive dyskinesia. It's like they mention is somehow eradicated. So they use this words to search. Nowadays it's really hard to really make consistent research using keywords. So the age, year, and I think we cannot see the p-values here. So if there is such table, I always want to see some p-value difference or some more than the characteristics. They use those characteristics about race, because genetics may be a factor too, and antipsychotic dose is also important, and recent studies cannot find much difference about antipsychotic dose because it's really hard to calculate it, and because they're not used on the same antipsychotics, and so you cannot really know how calculate it well, how it is changed, or whether patients take their medications. So thanks for watching this video. If you are interested, you can find this article by searching this title using Google or whatever search engine you like to use. Have a beautiful day. Bye bye.